Morning, everybody. Hello. I hope you've had a lovely day. Can you hear me? We have the great honour of having here tonight Julie Stoneman, who, as you know, is from the Alliance for Scotland's Rainforest, and she's going to talk to us about the work of the Alliance, which was formed last year, I reckon. Yeah, I'll leave that to Julie. But we are live streaming this event, and anyone who would prefer not to be in the live stream, please move your chair to the back left-hand corner of the room, because that won't be captured by the live stream. And I presume if there's no one moving that you're all okay with that. Okay, over to you, Julie.
Okay, can you hear me all right? Yep. Okay, well, firstly, thank you so much for inviting me to speak. It's a real honour to be here today. And then I got thrown in a fantastic walk up in the hill with Gus today, talking about montane birch and all sorts of habitats I didn't know. So I'm really had a fantastic day. I was just reflecting, actually, I think this is the first time I've given a talk to a real live audience for a long time. Usually I'm just looking at a Zoom screen sitting at home, so it feels a bit strange, doesn't it? But anyway, let's see how we... So yes, my name's Julie Stoneman. I've got a brilliant... thank you. I've got a brilliant job title. It's called Saving Scotland's Rainforest Project Manager. Hopefully this will come back on. So I work for Plant Life Scotland, a small charity. I'm sure you know about it. Looks after wild plants and fungi. But most of the time I have a little hat on my head which says the Alliance for Scotland's Rainforest. And that's because my role is about coordinating the collaborative activities between partners of the Alliance for Scotland's Rainforest. So we'll just wait for this slight technical hitch to pass and we'll get the presentation back. I think it's rebooting. Yay! Thank you, that's a relief. I couldn't have done that without it. Right, okay, I'll go to the next slide. Okay, now I know you're quite an educated audience, and I think you're probably the most educated audience I've spoken to so far. But I am going to go back to basics on this, because I think if I've learned one thing in this job, I've been in this job for about, I don't know, just over a year and a half. Not many people have heard that there's a rainforest in Scotland, and if they have, they probably call it by something different, or they've probably got a different idea about what it exactly is. So I'm just going to set the record straight on what we think it is in the Alliance, and I'm hoping you'll go on with that. So I'll just talk about what the rainforest is, why it's so special, what the threats are, and then I can talk a bit about the Alliance for Scotland Rainforest and how we sort of got started and what we're focusing on and what we're doing. It's a shortish talk, it's only about 20 minutes. I was hoping we could do a film, but I'm not sure we'll have the technological capability for that, so we might have to skip over that, but then there'll be time for questions at the end. Is that okay? I don't know. All right, so this rainforest we have, we're not stringing this, it is rainforest. It's part of the biome called coastal temperate rainforest. This biome is very rare habitat around the world, less than 1% of the world's surface you'll find it in. It's got this really weird disjunct distribution. You find it in the Pacific Northwest of Canada, America, in Chile, South Africa, Australia. You find it in Japan, and you find it here in Europe as well. And what we have in Europe, the fragments that are left, Scotland has the highest quantity and quality of all the temperate rainforest in Europe. So it's really important for us to be looking after it. You find it where you get very high annual rainfall, mild winters, cool summers, and of course you need clean air as well. Right, I'm just going to nip now into the biome we're in now, which you'll be very familiar with, the boreal forest biome. So this, of course, is this vast swathe of conifers which stretches across the northern hemisphere. We've got it here in Scotland. We're in it right now. It's called Caledonian Pine. So this is about 130 times bigger than coastal temperate rainforest habitat. And if you were to go into a pub in Scotland and ask people, what do you think the most important kind of woodland habitat there is in Scotland? If you were to get an answer, you probably get the answer Caledonian Pine. And if you said to the people in there, well, yeah, what about Scotland's rainforest then? They'd probably give you a really blank look because nobody's heard that there's rainforest in Scotland. And I myself, I've been working in conservation for yonks. And one of my first jobs was at Rahoy Hills Nature Reserve on Morven Peninsula, which has temperate rainforest in it. And at the time, and this is quite a while ago now, I had no idea that it was temperate rainforest myself. We called it something else, I think. So you hear it being called Atlantic woodland, Western Atlantic woodland, Celtic rainforest, Atlantic rainforest. You hear people talk about Atlantic oak as if that's the only kind of rainforest that you have, or hazel, but it can be any kind of semi-natural woodland. So I suppose if we want to raise the profile of this thing, then we need to make sure that people understand what we are actually talking about. So in the Alliance for Scotland's Rainforest, we've agreed in Scotland, in a Scottish context, we'll call it Scotland's Rainforest. In a more general context, we'll call it Temperate Rainforest. And I think if everybody calls it the same name, then we might be able to raise its profile to the levels that we need if we're going to do something about this habitat, because it is in need of a lot of TLC. So I hope you'll join us on that journey of calling it Scotland's Rainforest. So this is where you find it here in Scotland. It's on this vast geographic area. It's about 21% of Scotland, all the way from North Sutherland down to South Argyll and most of the Inner Hebrides as well. In this area, you'll find about 30,000 hectares of what we call core rainforest remaining. So that's rainforest that has the kind of biodiversity associated with it. That's not much. That's just an area a bit bigger than the size of Edinburgh. So there's not much left, and it's very fragmented. There is other woodland in here as well, but it's not called rainforest. So what is it that that makes the rainforest a rainforest? Well, it comes down to some plants, which you'll be very familiar with, I imagine. Really boring name, called lower plants. So these are the bryophytes and the lichens. And bryophytes are mosses and liverworts, if you didn't know that already. And I don't know if you've been in the rainforest, but if you're outside the rainforest and these fragments of rainforest bits, it can be very blowy outside, very exposed to the elements. And then if you dip in underneath the canopy, it's suddenly very calm and it's very moist. And you get these epiphytes over everything, over the rocks, in the ravines, on the trees, on the ground. And they create this really magical and amazing feel to the rainforest. It's quite special in there. But it's the quantity, the diversity, and the rarity of these lower plants that make these woodlands internationally important. So in 1 hectare of really good rainforest habitat, about 200 different species of lichens have been found. And in some of the best sites, there's 200 species or more of bryophytes. That's really, really rich, the richest you'd find in all of Europe. These are very important places for biodiversity. Some of these species are incredibly rare. Some of them are only found in Scotland. You know, we should be looking after this for its amazing biodiversity. There's other more recognisable species in there as well, which also make the place special, like songbirds like the spotted flycatcher, rare butterflies like the checkered skipper, and red squirrels like the one we saw today, marrows like red squirrel we saw today. So lots of really nice wildlife to see in this, as well as all the very, difficult to identify lower plants. But it's not just for biodiversity alone that we need to save the rainforest. It's often called a nature-based solution, one of these lovely buzzwords going around at the moment. We love talking about the rainforest as a nature-based solution because the politicians prick their ears up. We've got the big climate conference happening in Glasgow this year. They love to hear about nature-based solutions, but it is a nature-based solution which can help us with our twin biodiversity and climate crises. So these woodlands, they're slow growing on poor soil, but they do lock up carbon permanently. So they're part of that picture of mitigating against carbon, but against the climate crisis. But they also help us with adaptation as well. So these will regulate against these big extreme weather events that we're finding with climate change. They'll regulate the water, they'll prevent soil erosion, they'll prevent flooding and so on. So they offer us ecosystem services, as they're called. And it's not just for biodiversity, and it's not just for the ecosystem services that we should be looking after this habitat. Probably most of all is the people who live and work amongst these woodlands. So these woodlands attract tourists, they create livelihoods in the tourism industry. That's really important in these very sparsely populated part of Scotland. If we were to restore this habitat, it would create lots of jobs, like this chap getting rid of rhododendron in the middle here. That might contribute to the green recovery, another nice buzzword that the Scottish Government will prick their ears up to. And they're important places for health and well-being. And, you know, we all know how important it is to get out in nature, and the rainforest is no exception. So what is it we need to save the rainforest from? Well, there are some really major threats at large. And this one, I imagine you are familiar with this lovely, pretty pink bush that you flowers in the spring, introduced into the British Isles in Victorian era. There's run rampant everywhere and really loves the west coast. It's choking about 40% of the rainforest, so it prevents regeneration, it chokes out those lichens and bryophytes, it prevents access. And I'm sure, as many of you are aware, this is a really difficult thing to get rid of. So there's been far too many projects where it's been done in bits, you know, bit here, bit there, bit there. You can't do that with rhododendron. You have to do it on a big scale with a really concerted effort over many years if you want to do it. So we know we can do it, but you need to work in a different way than we have done in many projects. So there's far too many failed projects to get rid of rhododendron, and people say, well, you know, you can't do it, give up. But we can do it, but we need to do it in a very strategic, targeted approach over many years to do. The other massive issue are high deer numbers. So again, in about 40% of the rainforest, the deer numbers are so high that the woodlands can no longer regenerate. And in some places you can see them starting to disappear. So if we don't do something about that, we will lose more of this woodland in the future. This will start to change, we think, over the next few years, since the Deer Working Group report and the Scottish Government's acceptance of many of those recommendations. So there will be a shift. And as I'll talk about later, some of us in the Alliance are working with some other organisations to try and sort of find some solutions on this. But that's something that needs to change. We can't just keep putting fences around everything. And the other thing to, of course, remember is that deer are part of the ecosystem, and they're needed in the rainforest, because if you just chuck a fence around and let everything regenerate, actually that's not very good for the lichens in the rainforest. They need a bit of light, so you need a balance of grazing. So we need our deer as well. And there are lots of other problems, but another massive one is the fragmented nature of this habitat. So I said there were 30,000 hectares left. But they're in these fragments. So if you look at the purple bits over there, they're sort of fragments of rainforest left. So the median size of a fragment of rainforest is only 25 hectares. That's tiny. And so a fragment of that size isn't very resilient against threats like tree diseases, ash dieback, climate change, everything else that's facing these things. So we need to expand and connect these fragments. And the Alliance would like to double the size of the rainforest over the next 25 years to try and give it a bit more resilience to everything that's been thrown at it. So this habitat, this is no walk in the park looking after this habitat. These are big landscape scale threats. which many people go, well, you're not going to win anyway, it's impossible. So we've really got to get ourselves together and get on with it. And that's why you need an alliance. You can't do this alone. You have to work collaboratively across the landscape together in all sorts of ways. So the alliance was actually formed in 2017, and it was Woodland Trust that kicked it off. So Woodland Trust have a number of treescapes in the UK. They've got 10 of them, and this one is one of their treescapes. It's the only one in Scotland, so it's high priority for them. So they scouted around to find a number of organisations that also had a priority to look after this habitat, and they gathered a collection together. So we've now got 23 different organisations, and Reforesting Scotland is the latest one to join. It's a nice bunch of organisations. So you've got your usual NGOs, you might imagine, like, well, Plant Life, who I work for, RSPB, Scottish Wildlife Trust, National Trust of Scotland, you know, you'd expect them there. There's some really specialist societies like British Lichen Society, British Biological Society. They're really great to work with. We've got some sort of groups like Scottish Landowners Estates, Community Woodlands Association. They give us access into lots of different people who are managing land. There's also the statutory agencies, and that's quite interesting. So we've got Forestland Scotland, we've got Nature Scot, we've got Scottish Forestry. And so it's really interesting having them on because, you know, the people who represent them are passionate about the rainforest, but the organisations that they represent, we really need to influence to make a difference. So they can help us with that. So we can't advocate as the Alliance. We can't actually save Scotland's rainforest if we're talking to the Scottish Government, because we have the Scottish Government on the cards. But they can help us form a strategy so NGOs can do it out with the Alliance. And, you know, it's a bit of a rocky road to navigate, but we do manage to do it. Anyway, but we are really pleased to have Reforesting Scotland on the book, so thank you for joining our Alliance. So the first thing the Alliance did, which took a couple of years, was produce this report called The State of Scotland's Rainforest. And if you Google this, you can download it from the Woodland Trust website very easily. So this report collated all the facts and figures about rainforests for the first time and laid out a case saying this is a really important, internationally important habitat which is under severe threat, and these are the stats that back that cause up. So having that and having it agreed amongst all the Alliance is really important, because that is our case that we campaign against, essentially. We have an agreed line, agreed case that we can go and say, this is why it's important. So alongside that was a strategy to save Scotland's rainforest. This was a sister document, all published at the same time in spring 2019, and launched at an event at the Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh. So it created quite a lot of media fanfare. But the strategy tells you everything you can do to save the rainforest, but you probably need a generation or two to to do everything in that document, but it does tell you, you know, it does give you the idea about how we can do it. So I turned up in early 2020, and I had a 3-year contract at the time, and so really I had to go around the partners and really say, if we were to work collaboratively together, where do we put our focus? Because we can't do everything in that strategy, so what should we do? And 4 areas of focus bubbled up quite easily, actually, in agreement. So the first is to establish landscape scale projects to restore and expand these habitats. That's an obvious one. The next one's really carefully worded. It says, identify how the Scottish Government could give greater priority to restoring Scotland's rainforest. And it's a weird wording because we can't advocate. We can't influence the Scottish Government as the Alliance. So, but we can identify how to do it. So that's what we do. We want to encourage and enable landowners and land managers to manage their rainforest well. And we want to maximise our own collaboration to make sure that we continually improve our understanding within the Alliance of how to manage this habitat. So I'm just going to kind of nip through these 4 areas to just let you know what we're doing at the moment. So these are our landscape scale projects that we've identified. We have a number of criteria that we say this is what a landscape scale project is. This is what we'll call it in the Alliance. So we've got 4 of them. The ones on the left are ready to go. We just need the money, and that's quite difficult. So Saving Morven's Rainforest is run by RSPB. Saving Argyll's Rainforest is run by Argyll Coast and Countryside Trust. But these are collaborative projects in their own right anyway. On the right are the two Woodland Trust Scotland projects at Glen Torridon, expanding out from their estate at Ben Shieldig, and Loch Arkaig, which again is expanding out from their Arkaig estate. But they're still more in development mode. But the idea is, the Alliance is a voluntary partnership. It can't lead these projects. But the idea is that if we've got these projects, then we've got a commitment all to get behind them. We all want them to work. So we'll pool our expertise and enthusiasm and our time and resource and to make them as strong as possible for funders. We need to convince funders they're really high priority, but most of all, we need to make sure these aren't competitive. These are collaborative projects that all lead up to the same thing, which is saving Scotland's rainforest. And that's really important because we're all chasing the same pots of money at the moment. On advocacy, I'd say we've done really, really well. So when I started, there was no mention of Scotland's rainforest anywhere in Scottish Government documents, but now they're in the manifesto. They're manifesto commitments for 3 of the parties, SNP, Conservatives and Greens, all said they would restore Scotland's rainforest if they're in government. It was in the SNP Green Party power sharing agreement to restore Scotland's rainforest, and it's in the next programme for government as well. So we have a lot now to hold, well, it shows that they've been listening to us. We've been pricking up their ears with our combined voice saying save Scotland's rainforest. And now we can hold them to account. So we have no money on the table. We have no actual commitment from them. We need to hold them to account. So what some of the organisations have got together and said, you know what, if you really want to save Scotland's rainforest, you need about £500 million to do it. We're not talking about the odd, million here or there. We're actually talking about serious money to invest. And if the Scottish Government put in half of that, 250 million over a 10-year period, we could probably raise the rest from private finance and so on. So that seems like an extraordinary amount of money. It's the same as the Peatland Action Fund actually we're asking for. So there are some very live conversations going on at the moment. We would love an announcement about it around this climate conference. I don't know if we're going to get it, but we have got them talking. We've actually been called in by the Biodiversity Unit of the Scottish Government next week to explain ourselves about it, because we've written a letter to the Minister to call on this, and Reforesting Scotland signed that letter as well, along with many other organisations, and out with ASR as well, the Alliance as well. So we are getting there, but we have to annoy them and keep banging our drum. So those are the 2 objectives that we've really been focusing on: landscape scale projects and advocacy, combined with comms. Land management is really important. I'm delighted to say that Plant Life has very recently employed a new member of staff called Oliver Moore, who's a lichen and bryophyte expert and just a fantastically passionate, communicative person. And he's been brought in to get a kind of standard over the kind of monitoring and management you should be doing with rainforest. Not a straight-jacketed standard, because it depends where you are, but something that we can agree across the Alliance and promote within the Alliance. And then once we've got that, we can promote it to non-Alliance organisations, mostly through advisors, because, it's a big area of land. So we've got that going, and the other thing we've got going is we're a small, again, a subgroup of organisations are working with the Association for Deer Management Groups and Cairngorms National Park to look for ways to try and unlock some of the really difficult conversations going on, and try and help people speak in a more constructive way in these conversations around deer management. So we're looking at using civic mediation to try and unlock some of the conflict going on. So that's at the beginning. We've just done an assessment. We're working out our proposal. We'll need some funding, but that will also help with land management. And finally, being exemplar. So this is something that is just ongoing all the time. It has been tricky to do it over Zoom for so long, but we are now getting out and about, and we can meet each other again. But it is, it is a really wonderful job, because the people who represent these organisations are all people who are very passionate about the rainforest in one way or the other. So we can get them together and really sort of discuss how to do it, what we need to do, and share our our resources and our knowledge and our information and so on for the greater good. We call it rising above our logo for the greater good. And then this thing about speaking with one voice. So we have a comm strategy, and the comm strategy is quite targeted. It's aimed directly and squarely at politicians and funders at the moment. But again, it's really important we all speak with one voice. We use consistent language. We give out these clear, consistent messages to these people, to the people who can make a difference, every opportunity we can. And if you look around the websites of the different partners, you'll see that the language has now been adjusted. So we are actually using the same sort of messaging and terminology. So it does look like we are speaking with one voice. So I thought I'd just tell you a few things about what's going on in the comms world. So Raleigh International, another relatively new organisation, just joined the Alliance last year. They were really interested in it because they started a new UK programme and they were looking for something to kickstart it with, and they used Saving Scotland's Rainforest. So they've brought young people who they are training up to be environmental leaders into the rainforest to do practical management work and really inspire them about why we need to, why the environment is so important and what we need to do about it. So Raleigh International is a fantastic organisation because it's got great reach. And so as a result of bringing these volunteers into the rainforest, the Times got involved and they did a great article. I think National Trust of Scotland were in on this as well. And then once the Times article came out, there was one in the Daily Mail. And there's a Daily Mail video online that you can watch about the scourge of rhododendron. So it's very nice to get these messages into the press. This is one called Climate Beacons. So there are a number of climate beacons around the UK. And there's one down in Argyll, which is in conjunction with Cove Park, but it's one of the partners, the Argyll Coast and Countryside Trust. I'm not quite sure what a climate beacon is actually, but it's to do with COP, this climate conference, and again, it just shines a spotlight on a particular place. And this is all connected with rainforest. So it's a really nice way to promote it. And this is, I think, my favourite one, also connected with COP26. So Jiboyana is an organisation that works with Indigenous peoples on their role in protecting the environment and nature. And they are bringing over 5 Indigenous leaders from the Amazon to COP26 to talk about some of the issues around Indigenous leaders and land and nature in the Amazon. They heard about our project because Raleigh International will be tweeting all about it, and they said, we would love to bring these leaders to the rainforest because it's going to be really difficult for them in Glasgow. We want to bring them to show them nature in Scotland. We want them to meet people who live and work there, and we want them to, they would like to come and bless Scotland's rainforest. So it looks like this is actually going to happen, all the issues about visas and money and everything else. So it looks like we will get some Indigenous leaders to the rainforest and they will do a ceremony and we will have a big photo shoot because they're as interested in media as we are. And that will shine a light on the rainforest at a time when there is this international focus on Scotland. So that's a fantastic opportunity for us to tell the story. And we've raised some money as well to make a film, and Reforesting Scotland has contributed to that, I should say, happily. So we should have a film, which again is a really unique angle about the parallels between what's happening in the Amazon and what's happening here in Scotland in terms of the rainforest. So we are working out the messaging on that, but that'll be a lovely legacy from this event. Oh, I'm going to skip over that because I don't think we can show it. Oops. There we are. So, so that's my last slide. So there's plenty of it. We've got some time for questions, but there is plenty more information. There is a website called savingscotlandsrainforest.org.uk. On that, you can go to the homepage and watch the film. And the film's really nice because it tells the story about why Scotland's rainforest is important from the perspective of people who live and work in the rainforest. It's a lovely little 4-minute film. We're also on Twitter as well, and that gives you snippets of stuff going on. But if you ever go to the rainforest, please do tweet, use these hashtags. Okay, thanks for listening. That's enough from me. Do you have any questions?
Boop, boop.
Hello. Thanks, Julie. Really enjoyed that presentation. My question is about rhododendron removal and how you crack that nut. How do you make it in the landowner's interest to remove rhododendron? Is there any way you can see of making it financially desirable to remove them, or do you think it's just going to come from, you know, volunteers, people carrying out best practice, grants, etc.?
Well, you can already get grants to remove rhododendron. Strangely, these grants will only happen once your rhododendron is pretty much out of control. You know, if you've got a few bits of rhododendron in the landscape, they won't give you a penny. So you need to have a rhododendron problem to get a rhododendron grant. We've actually, Woodland Trust has been working to put together an advocacy document, a briefing about what's wrong with our rhododendron grants, and that's all part of our strategy to influence the Scottish Government to get the grants so that they're acceptable to landowners. There are big problems with the grants. So, for example, you get audited afterwards, so you only get enough for a couple of treatments, and really, if you want to get rid of rhododendron, you need to be doing it for longer than that. But if you're audited, you know, they come back and they have a look and they find there's rhododendron remaining, they will not give you the money, and this can cost a lot of money. So how can we expect landowners to risk the finance of outlaying all of that, maybe not to get the money back at the end of the day? So we are, so some organisations within the Alliance are pushing the Scottish Government to get these grants together. So we need to influence landowners to do this, and there are organisations doing that, but we understand that it's not financially viable through the grant system at the moment. So we need to change that for the wider countryside, and we need to raise money for some of these big projects to do really large-scale rhododendron clearance. But I think it's really important to remember that there's no point in doing rhododendron on just a bit here and a bit there, because it just comes back and it will reinvade. You know, each bush, a mature bush, produces about 1 million seeds. You know, it's hopeless. So you've got to do it on a collaborative way across a whole catchment or a peninsula or some sort of defensible area. So it's not easy, rhododendron, but you can do it if you're strategic.
That was going to be my second part of my question was, can you legislate against people who have it in their gardens? I mean, can you stop the problem at source as well as tackling it where it exists? Or will the Scottish Government be unlikely to grasp that method?
Well, we already have the legislation to do that. So interestingly, for example, in the Loch Lomond National Park, they've been doing lots of rhododendron clearance, but they've got loads and loads of different landowners, many of which are absentee. But some of them, they just cannot get access to get an agreement, or they will say, no, you're not getting rid of my rhododendron from my garden. But Nature Scott could put out an order, a statutory order for removal, but they don't like to at all. In fact, I think they've only ever done it once against SCE, I think it was, years ago. So we need Nature Scott to have a bit more teeth if they're going to exercise those statutory powers, which they do hold, to get rid of rhododendron.
Can I just add something? I'm aware that rhododendron can carry a form of Phytophthora, and therefore if there's rhododendron near an infected larch stand, it can transmit it. It can spread Phytophthora, and sometimes rhododendron is earmarked for plant health orders, so that makes it obligatory from Forestry Commission, I think. Is that right? Do you want to?
Yeah, well, I've been doing erosion control for about 30 years, and we got a huge grant at some point to clear it through our ancient woodland. But you can only actually get grants still, I believe, for the cut and poison, where you have to burn and clear the roadies, because then whoever it is can come along and actually see the road is completely dead. But I've been doing it for the last few years with a chip, so you just make a tiny little chip with an axe, a hand axe, and then just drizzle a very small amount of Roundup, and it dies standing. So it's incredibly quick and beautiful to watch, because within 6 months you just have these grey, dead banks of roadies. But you can't get a grant for that. So that really needs to be pushed, that you get grants for that method, because it just takes no time at all compared to the cut and burn.
Yeah, and that's a very effective way of doing it.
Really
I was in Wales
effective.
recently looking at their Celtic
Absolutely brilliant.
Rainforest project, and they've just got swathes of these dead rhododendron bushes
Yeah.
everywhere. So yeah, absolutely.
I
we
mean,
know
I
how to do it.
Walk through our woodland.
Yeah.
I mean, one half of it's clear because so we're just pulling up little. We
Yeah.
have, our boundary has got
Yeah.
banks of roadies on it. But the other half, a lot got away up little cliffs and things like that. And so I've been doing that. And now I walk down that end and I just see these bones.
Yeah.
It is lovely.
Well, it's great to hear you're doing well on
But
it.
I'm in Argyll, and you're right. 0 to 80 feet of roadies if we do nothing.
Yeah.
All around the west coast of Scotland.
Yeah.
Nothing but roadies. I mean, it's
Thank you. Anyone else got a question? Could you tell us a little bit about the Plant Nurseries project?
Oh, is that the seed collection project?
That's right, yes.
Oh, this is a really lovely project. I love this one. It's from Woodland Trust again. Woodland Trust are an absolute force for great in the rainforest zone. They're doing all sorts of stuff. And one of their most recent projects is to try and address the dearth of availability of local provenance native trees on the west coast. It's a massive gap. So they've teamed up with a young commercial outfit called Proven Plants. I think the guy's called Craig Shearer, and he worked at Alba Nursery. His dad, I think, runs Alba Nursery, and he's very passionate about native woodlands, so he's gone off on his own to really focus on native woodlands. So Woodland Trust have contracted him to work with volunteers up and down the west coast to collect seeds, which he will then grow, and then he will give back some of the seedlings to those local projects, and he will sell some himself. And so it's a blended kind of volunteer commercial model, which should work, because collecting seeds is a really difficult and time-consuming activity. So actually, we were out collecting hazelnuts with one of the volunteers, happens to be our friend, and we were out collecting hazelnuts on the west coast a couple of weekends ago, and that will all go back to Craig, and he'll sort them out and plant them, and then it'll come back to the west coast in the future. So that's a 3-year project, but hopefully it'll be a bit longer than that. But he's also setting up pop-up nurseries in places, where places which just need trees now. So they're like pop-up nurseries. They don't have to be permanent, in different places, to just really encourage these places and facilitate these places to be able to grow local provenance trees. I mean, at the moment, if you try and get hold of a hazel, you'd have to get it from like northern France. That's what they say. It's just ridiculous. So it's really filling a gap.
I thought that one would be of particular interest to some of our members who do have crofts or would like to grow seed on, and it will provide jobs for people.
I think you mentioned in terms of the deer management groups working with Cairngorms National Park. I was just intrigued by that because none of the temperate rainforest is in the park. So can you tell us a bit more about that role?
That's an interesting one. Because, we started off talking with ADMG about this, but of course the problem of deer goes way beyond, way beyond the rainforest zone. So we are creeping out of it. It's not really an Alliance for Scotland's Rainforest project as such. It's a number of organisations that have come together that are from the Alliance, because it's in my interest as the project manager, because deer are such an important issue. But it's pointless trying to do this just in the rainforest zone. It's for all of Scotland. So we have limited it to upland Scotland. And Cairngorms National Park have done some great work with their deer management groups to look at more constructive dialogue and working together in land management groups. And so they were very interested when they heard about this, and they gave some money towards the project, so we brought them in. So we have a steering group with them in as well. Yeah. One day I'll get kicked off and somebody who can represent all of Scotland will be helping to manage that. But at the moment it's very early days, that work. But very exciting, very interesting.
Any more questions? Has anyone been to visit any rainforests in Scotland? Do you want to shout out the places that you visited or your favourite rainforest? Anyone else? Yeah, I noticed your map actually didn't have, I don't know if you had any areas on Mull, but particularly the south coast of Mull has some beautiful rainforest.
Yeah,
and
it
wasn't
in the
on
zone. It's in the zone.
Okay. Anyone else?
What do you think is going to be the best strategy to getting landowners to change their land management to try and save the forest? Do you think it will be asking the government to change legislation so it becomes compulsory, or trying to influence landowners individually so that they want to do it themselves instead of being forced to by legislation?
Sorry, is that about, sorry, I didn't catch it. Was it about deer or about rainforest restoration?
About rainforest restoration.
Oh,
yeah.
The most important thing we need for landowners to restore forest is money. So if we can give them enough of a financial incentive and we can make sure it's worth their while, at the moment there are so many barriers to them doing it. So if you want to fence off a bit of your woodland to let it regenerate, at the price of wood and steel at the moment, you haven't got a chance if you come to those, if you're using those grants. So the Woodland Trust have outreach advisors. They have projects like the Croft Woodland projects, and they'll actually help landowners by footing the bill at the beginning. So they'll pay for it on behalf of the landowner and then claim it back through the landowner. But they'll also top it up as well, top up the grant for the government. So that's very specialist work done by one organisation, one charity, dependent on, you know, their fundraising. What we need is really those grants to be strong enough to let everybody do that. We need a rainforest restoration fund that the Scottish Government support to really do the job. So that's what we're pushing at the moment, that we need money. That's the barrier. There's lots of landowners that would love to help the rainforest, but you can't expect them to do it if they're financially put out.
So you think there's a desire to do it generally from landowners? There's not so much of a pushback, because if there's not continuous funding, then some landowners might not feel like they can commit to doing it if they're going to lose grazing land, for example.
So I don't know. I couldn't give you a sort of really good answer to that, but because I don't really know the answer to that. But all I can say is that the Woodland Trust are inundated with requests from landowners on rainforest management, and actually they work across Scotland, but they're inundated with requests, and they're now at the point where they have to really think about how are they going to serve those requests and how they're going to now prioritise those requests, because they can't serve them all. So at the moment there's nothing really telling us that landowners are a problem. They're not the problem. The problem is we don't have the investment available.
Thank you.
Is it just as simple as fencing off an area? Surely there's more to it. I mean, it's such a special environment. It didn't seem to me when I was there that you could easily replicate it in other places unless they were in some way really suitable for it. So I can't believe that if the neighbouring farmer just puts up a fence that it would extend, but maybe it would.
Well, I mean, each place is different. I mean, you can't have a sort of one-size-fits-all on woodland management, as I'm sure many people in this room know. So, and also fencing, we don't want fencing. We want to get deer numbers down so you get natural regeneration. That's a much better way of doing it But at the moment, the only pragmatic way to do it is to get a fence around it. Yeah, and you could look at grazing, you know, like conservation, cattle grazing is really great in the rainforest. There's all sorts of things you can do. And you should come to one of our meetings and then you'll realise how complicated it really could be. And you know, Oliver's got a job ahead of him on getting that management sort of standard together. So no, it's not. It's far more complicated than that. But you'd have to speak to a proper woodland manager about that.
How could individual members of RS help at this stage? Are you asking us to write to people, or would you like us to work as an organisation or continue to work as an organisation? Is there anything that people can do as individuals?
Yeah, if you go onto this website, there's a page called Get Involved, and there's 6 ways you can get involved. One of them is to write to your MSP and ask what they're doing to save Scotland's rainforest. You might want to mention investment in that. But there's lots of information on the website. You get involved in the seed collection project. You can give money. Both Morven and Argyll have a sort of fundraising page that you can put money into. You could take amazing photographs and you could tweet them and talk about the rainforest. You could put them on our Flickr site, and then we might be able to use them for other things. And there are probably some other things on there on that web page. But yeah, there's lots of things you can do. And there's all sorts of citizen science projects around as well, which you might have heard of, like monitoring tree disease, or I think veteran trees, and you can monitor butterflies and birds and whatever you like. So there's a lot of links on that website that will take you to places where you can help. So lots of different ways.
Thank you very much, Julie. Has anyone got a question? Nope. Thank you. Thank you very much.